taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Chevy Trax. In this video, you're going to learn everything you need to know about the cluster and all of the different steering wheel buttons. So let's go for it. First thing I'm going to point out is that the steering wheel inside of this thing is going to be a manual telescoping. So just by your left knee, there's a release there, and you can go in, out, up and down to create that perfect position. Once you find it, click it, lock it back into place. The steering wheel buttons on the left-hand side here are going to be for cruise control and then for your heated steering wheel. And then the buttons along this side have a few different functions, but let's kind of dive through. I'm going to go with these ones first. So you've got your adaptive cruise or regular cruise control. So what you can do is toggle the cruise control on using this button. And then once you get up to speed, or even as you're speeding up, you can then push down in order to set it at your desired speed. And then you can go up or down to either increase or decrease 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. And then you can just toggle it off there if you want to. And then you can also push this button if you wanted to temporarily pause or cancel the cruise control system. You'd also have the flexibility to be able to push and hold this way instead. And what that's going to do is give you regular cruise control. So you can either go regular or the adaptive cruise. So regular cruise control is exactly that. You set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, it's going to go 100. Versus the adaptive cruise that we're in right now, if the car in front of you slows down and you've set it at 100, the vehicle is automatically going to slow down as well. It's a very smart system. And then there's a distance indicator, so how close or far away do you want to be from the vehicle that's in front of you? For the most part, I tend to find that closest gap tends to give the best results, but that's going to be a matter of preference and your own comfort level as well. And then you can toggle the system off there. But if you want to actually see how this system works in real time, I've put together a walkthrough video that you can find down in the description of this video. The Trax does have the option for a heated steering wheel, depending on which trim level of the vehicle that you're in. And it's heated pretty much all the way around, which, I mean, Canadian winters definitely comes in handy. The buttons along the side here serve a few different functions. So this one, once you've got a phone connected, you'd be able to do things like use your Siri or your Google Assistant. You do have to be hooked up over Bluetooth in order for that to work. So if you want an actual walkthrough video on the infotainment system, like setting up phones and things like that, you'll find that walkthrough down in the description of this video. This is going to be your phone button for hanging up on a phone call. This is going to be the button to answer a phone call. And then you've also got your media button there as well. So you've got your media, and then you can scroll up and down using the little scroll wheel here. And that's going to be to change between AM, FM, Sirius XM, or whatever other audio sources are currently available. And then you can see there, it just goes away after a moment as well. From there, a few other neat ones to point out. There are some buttons behind both the left and the right-hand side of the steering wheel. So the one on the left side, you can see there, jumping between all of your available presets. And that's a mix of AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. Off to the right side is going to be for volume. So you can increase or decrease your volume this way. So yeah, there is a little button right in the infotainment system there, but it can actually be a little bit challenging to reach towards it as you're driving. So being able to adjust your volume this way or your presets this way is pretty useful. Now, the steering wheel inside of this thing, it's, like I said, it's nice, it's comfortable. The stick on the left-hand side is going to be for, obviously, your turn signals there, so left, right. And then if you wanted to also flash out your high beams, you've got the flexibility to do it. And then you can also toggle on your auto lamps. As you can see there, as I'm flashing my high beams, I can just flash them because I'm currently in the auto mode. So there's a little selector switch just above, let's see there, this little guy there. So you can adjust into different modes as well. So if you wanted to permanently be able to lock out your high beams, you just have to be in one of the other modes. So get yourself out of auto mode. I normally recommend staying in auto mode the majority of the time, or you can turn your lights off. But auto mode, like I said, in my opinion, is the way to go. Unless you want your high beams permanently locked out, in which case you're going all the way to the right. And then you can push away to permanently lock those high beams on instead. From there, you've also got stick on this side, and that's going to be for your front wipers. And then you can also flip this way to adjust your rear wiper as well. You're going to pull in towards you for that front wiper fluid, and you're going to push away in order to get the rear wiper fluid going. Now let's kind of zoom in and go through a few other things on the actual cluster screen. So one other thing to point out is that you've also got the flexibility to be able to adjust the cluster, but I'm going to show you that one in just a second. Because along the top of the screen there, you've got the current direction that you're facing. You've got your current fuel level and how many kilometers or miles you are to empty. What gear you're currently in, so whether it's park, reverse, neutral, drive, etc. And then even if you're in your low gear. So when you're in low, you can see there, you can also adjust what gear you're in. using the shifter down the center stack. From there, you've got your current RPM gauge, your current speed, your current odometer, so however many kilometers are on the vehicle, your current engine temperature, and then if you've got a vehicle in front of you, it's what lead, like how far away from a second perspective are you from the vehicle that's in front of you there. And then as you have the adaptive cruise control system turned on, you're also going to have the current speed that you've got it set to coming right up inside of the cluster screen there as well. And then just toggle that off. And then as I mentioned, you do have the flexibility to customize this thing a little bit. So you've got your little scroll wheel in the middle here that doesn't actually do anything right now, but once you do a little bit of a push and hold, a few seconds and release, you can see there you've got different gauge faces that are available. So we're currently in gauge 1. So if you go gauge 2, that's going to give you a vastly different look. It's the same idea. So you've got your current speed there. There isn't a traditional though, so you don't see a tachometer. So I mean, I'm revving it a little bit, but it's not adjusting whatsoever. So that's just going to be your speedometer with your speed in the middle there as well. And then another option, we push and hold again for a few seconds and then release. Gets us to this for our gauge 3. Same idea. This is just going to be for your speed. So there's no actual speedometer available. But as you can see there, there's a fully different layout now. So rather than the fuel gauges going up and down and then the engine temperature, it's just a vastly different layout in comparison. And same idea, we can press and hold again in order to get to basic vehicle information. So you can see there your average fuel economy. Push and hold again in order to get to your infotainment. So if you had audio going versus a simple clean setup instead. Where, same idea, we don't have a tachometer, but there is the digital speedometer there. I personally, out of all of the different looks, would say that the one that I enjoy the most is probably going to be gauge 1, because you at least do have that traditional tachometer as well as the digital speed in the middle. But that one's going to come down to a matter of personal preference. And then you saw there was also the option for your trip counter, but through the infotainment system there's also a little traction control button there. So just push and you can see your traction control system that you can toggle on or off. And then the pages button there. And this one is going to be for a few other things. So you've got basic maintenance, so you can see what your current tire pressure is along with your oil life. You can swipe across if there's more information, so your engine air filter there as well. Gauges that are available, so you can see your battery versus your coolant. You can hop inside in order to show inside of the cluster. So you can see there, it kind of shoots the information across. Coolant temperature, same idea. You can have it show inside of the cluster. So you're just kind of selecting between different options, and then versus your trip counter. So if you wanted your total trip information there, you can also reset. So you can show it in the cluster if you want to, and then it's shown in the cluster, but you can also reset. So reset your trip 1 counter if you wanted to zero that out. Fuel economy, same idea. You can show that fuel economy in the cluster. You can change distance. If you wanted to use 40 versus 80 versus 160, so a full tank essentially, reset your score versus show that in the cluster. So it is kind of neat that you can kind of show different information. And then, I mean, as you see there, as you adjust different things inside of the infotainment system, it does kind of change up the dynamic look of the cluster screen as well. But in order to get back to that main look, same idea, you just have to push and hold for a second there until the screen comes up in order to move back into your gauge information. So it is kind of neat that you've got the flexibility to customize this thing a tiny little bit, but that's everything that you need to know about the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Chevy Trax.